The last England squad before the official England squad is announced for the Euros has just dropped minutes ago. So myself and Nubaid are going to talk through some of the new faces and some of the faces that haven't made it in there. There are a lot of injuries knocking about, which I think has affected it a little bit. But at the same time, there's a few political elements at play and actually players that have said, please don't pick me, which is fascinating. In terms of goalkeepers, it's Johnston, Pickford, Ramsdale. Pope, of course, still injured, out for a bit. And Henderson battling with Johnston. Some people a bit upset about Butland not making it in there, but he hasn't. I think that's fair enough. In terms of defenders, a couple of interesting ones here. So Jared Branthwaite, who I said yesterday had no chance on a video on my channel, is in there. He has been described by my friend who's an Everton fan as the Haaland of centre-backs.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
6'5". He's won 65% of his aerial duels, which is okay, actually. It's not. I think he's probably got a lot of aerial duels to deal with, maybe more so than others, playing for Everton. 52.3% long ball pass completion, and his tackle success rate is 82.9%, which is really, really strong. Thoughts on Branthwaite? I was surprised, I'll be honest. I thought it was one where, and I think I know why he's in there. I think he will be in there in the future. I think it's one where, come in, make yourself at home, and I think we'll properly look at you next season, because I think he'll be... There could be a few rumours about him, I think, in the summer. Everton probably still need to sell here and there, and he's one that would obviously make a lot of money, a lot of profit as well. So if you are able to sell him to a top team, and he is a top player, then I don't see the problem with that. I don't see him ending up in the squad, if I'm honest.
Who would you have instead?
I would have Colwill. I think Colwill's absolutely fantastic, and I think he's injured. We think he is, so that's why he's not in there at the moment. I actually would have Ben White in there, but
he doesn't want to be in there.
But he doesn't want to be in there. I think, and that's one of the interesting big talking points is that obviously something's not right there. But Gareth Southgate spoke quite, I think, fairly and sternly in what is probably the most difficult press conference every month that he has to do, where you've got so many options. As I say, that video I did yesterday, 46 names in there, and there's a few that, that were missing. So you're going to upset someone by not putting people in. And of course, this isn't the final squad. How close to the final squad do you think it is then?
I think we're pretty close, mainly because I do agree there'll be a certain players that I think he's trying out. I actually think Branthwaite will be in the eventual squad because of injuries, and because profile-wise, if Maguire picks up an injury, who's going to take up that dominant centre-back position who wins the aerial duels, who steps into midfield in possession? Probably is him, but you don't want that situation, but you need options for that situation.
I think just in case, then you look at him, Concert is in this squad as well. Dunk is in the squad. Joe Gomez makes his way back into the squad.
You're not a fan of that. You're not a fan of that choice.
I'm going to get destroyed for that. I've got no problem with being in the squad. And I think we've got a problem with the left backs because Shaw's never fit and Chilwell is constantly struggling. So I get it. I think the thing I would say is that, if you put a lineup forward, the best England lineup, and it's got Joe Gomez in it, that's probably the weak point. But again, that's kind of testament to how good the team is and the squad is. I think the hyperbole around him is a little bit too much, and I thought it was a bit too harsh last year. So I think the middle is probably the truth. He is, for me, he is a 6.5, 7 out of 10 player. You don't get 9s from Joe Gomez. He's not that kind of player. But I have absolutely no problem with him in this squad.
I actually think I slightly disagree with the fact that you don't get 9s from Joe Gomez, because this season he's playing as a left back. So I think we are seeing 8 or 9 out of 10 performances. The thing that I do completely agree with is last season he was overly criticised, and this season he's a little overhyped. But when you look at England's situation at left back, you've got 2 left backs that are injury prone. You've got Trippier or Gomez, and one of them 2 has to play in that position. And then it depends on your system. Are you going to push? Is Trent playing right back? And are you going to ask him to go further forward into midfield? Gomez sticks across, works perfectly fine. But he can play all across the back line, and I think that's super valuable in tournament football.
The midfield's interesting. You talk about Trent there. I feel like you've got to get Trent in this team. And again, I would like us to be playing Chilwell, I think, and Trent, so that Trent can step in. Or, chuck it out there, Trent as a left back. Just think about it. I don't think that's the worst idea in terms of someone stepping in if you're going to go and do that. And Kyle Walker can bomb on, but that's not really been Kyle Walker over the last few years. So there's definitely some sort of some kinks in the system here that needs sorting out with Southgate. In terms of the midfield, so Trent could be someone that's utilised as an out-and-out midfielder, which for Liverpool, he hasn't been an out-and-out midfielder. He's always sort of stepped into that role. Some players that missed out, Kobbie Mainoo, who I would like to see him there. And the reason I would like to see him there is like, and I get what Gareth's done, and I understand what he's doing here, and I think it will be the end of Henderson once we get to the end of this tournament. But I think he continues to, because he's not learning anything from Henderson. You're not going to learn anything from having Henderson in the squad. You know what he's about, who he is. And actually, you've got to be delighted that he's at Ajax playing a higher level of football. So go and see Kobbie Mainoo. But I think this is about the optics of it a little bit, where Henderson's in, so that when he's actually in at the end, it's not this big story. It's just one where, well, we kind of knew he was going to be in anyway, and people were kind of ready for it. Do you think Kobbie Mainoo's a little bit unlucky to not at least be having a look at him?
I think because of the number of midfielders that are there, if I'm not wrong, this 5, and I think he's preferred to look at the forwards, because if I look at that team and I go at the end for the Euros, who's playing in midfield? I can pick my 3. But if I look at the forwards, I go, we've got Saka, we've got Kane. Who's my left guy? Is it Foden? Could Foden play in midfield? So I think there's a lot of options as backup forwards, and therefore I think Mainoo's just not going to make the cut. But also, if he does make the cut, where's he going to play? Because at the moment, the stats we've got in front of us here are he ranks in the top 6% of midfielders for successful through balls, and in the top 9% for shot creating actions made via take-ons. Is that what I want him to do in this England midfield? Because if it is, we've got Jude Bellingham who can do that type of thing instead.
The question for me is, what happens if Declan Rice gets injured? That's what he needs to be thinking about. What's the worst thing that could happen? And if Declan Rice gets injured, then you're going to have to move things about, and you're probably going to have to play a bit of a double pivot there. Are you going to have to ask Bellingham to do something different, Conor Gallagher to do something different? And that's probably why he's coming back to Henderson as well, who could be sensible and knit it together. But I think Kobbie Mainoo is also another option with that. And again, if say Bellingham gets injured, again, I don't think he starts, but I think it's one where, like with Branthwaite, let's have a look at him. Let's see how, because it might be one where you go, wow, like he's actually like way too good. We need to get him involved, because I think that is an area where you could do it. But I think he's already made his mind up with Henderson, and I'm pleased to see Maddison in there again. In terms of the forwards, there's a long list of forwards here, but only a couple of strikers really. Actually, one more than we probably would have expected. So you've got Jared Bowen, who makes it in, Phil Foden, Anthony Gordon, who's in, who apparently his injury is not as bad as first thought. Harry Kane, of course. Cole Palmer makes it in again. Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Ivan Toney, and Ollie Watkins.
I'm looking at that, right, and immediately I go, there's a big, and this is your guy, there's a big Dominic Solanke hole missing. And Ivan Toney hasn't played a lot of football this season.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think, look, that he's back and he is playing now. And I think in terms of different profiles, is Ivan Toney a better player than Solanke? They're different. I think Solanke works harder. I think Ivan Toney is more dominant and probably overall a calmer finisher. If you don't forget what he has done in the Premier League. And
would you possibly swap Watkins out for Solanke?
I think, I think what he's missed out on here is one where you go, do you let Ollie Watkins become even more comfortable in this? And you've got big games, Belgium and Brazil, 2 huge opportunities to sort of see what you want. So it's the balance between giving people an opportunity of just having a look at people or just truly bedding down what your squad is moving forward. As I said at the start of the video, there's a lot of injuries sort of knocking about at the moment. And I think that has played a part in this. So there's an odd little mix there. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Branthwaite is quite possibly the guy, but I come back to it and I think there is a lot of centre-backs who are all of a quite a similar level, and I think that might be the one where he just went, go on then, you look pretty impressive, let's have a little look at you, because we can. I'll tell you what, Mark, are you happy with it? Are you happy with that squad?
I'm always happy with Gareth Southgate because I like the guy and I think he often makes the best decision that's available to him. I think like the only thing I've seen on social media is why is Henderson in there?
No Calvin Phillips?
No Calvin Phillips, no Sterling. But Calvin Phillips hasn't settled at West Ham. No. Sterling hasn't had a good season this season. Like, if you strip it back and look from the outside and go, what could he have actually done different? I would say probably the one thing that I would maybe change is maybe Harvey Elliott gets a shout. But I completely understand that he wants to see the defenders and the forwards because his midfield is already chosen.
Yeah.
That's it for me. I know you did a breakdown and you said 49 players or
46. Yeah, but you could have made 49 easily. You could have got it to that. So there's so many options there. I think another talking point, maybe Rashford or Sterling. Like who do you prefer in that scenario? You're going to get more tenacity from Sterling. Obviously, just outrageously great pro, and no one's played more games for Gareth Southgate as manager than Raheem Sterling, and he's really turned his back on him there. I think with Rashford, you've got someone who's sort of an out-and-out striker but who plays out wide, and someone who will kind of run beyond and maybe has that little bit better finishing quality than Sterling. And I think that's why he's gone for him there. Saddest thing is Ben White. I think Ben White needs to be in the England squad. And I was happy with what Gareth Southgate said. I thought he was honest in his assessment that the door was open. Tried to put to bed a few sort of non-truths in his opinion in terms of some disagreement with Holland, Stephen Holland. But that's a shame because that's a missing piece for me, that Ben White. Because when you say you lose Declan Rice, if you've got Ben White in that squad, he can play right back, he can play centre back, he could play as that 6. He's done that in the past.
It's inventive style.
He's that good. He's that good, and I don't think they don't have an out-and-out 6 who will stay put. And I think Ben White would actually, of what's out there, I know he hasn't played there a lot, could do that role.